Hi there. You know, I really would like to stop talking about trauma. I said Tita Lestai would be my last video about trauma, and I've made several videos since because that's my life. It's not funny, but it is my life. That is what my life is, a culmination of a series of trauma, literally a lifetime of trauma. So today we are going to speak about sexual violence because I came across I wrote something some years ago. I came across it, and there are two instances of sexual assault in it. It says 1 out of every 6 women in America has been a victim of attempted or completed rape in her lifetime. But what's even more startling is that I'm going to read this article. It's called "The Repetition Compulsion and Why Rape Victims Are More Likely to Be Assaulted Again." In society where the subject of rape is still taboo, the idea of even one attack is hard to grasp. The idea of multiple attacks seems far beyond probability. This makes it unimaginably hard for the considerable number of victims who do undergo multiple sexual assaults. It's not an unusual phenomenon. A little known fact is that being sexually assaulted puts you at a much higher risk of being assaulted again in the future, as does childhood sexual abuse. Sometimes referred to as re-victimization. It is not exclusive to sexual assault. Domestic violence victims are also more likely to undergo it a second time. Even robberies and burglaries seem to be self-propagating, and significantly so. Being robbed once places you at a 9 times higher risk of being robbed again, and being burglared means you have 4 times more reason to lock up your house. Being sexually assaulted greatly increased the risk of future assaults, with one study purporting that being sexually assaulted once meant a woman was 35 times more likely to be re-victimized. The percentage of women who were raped as children or adolescents and also raped as adults was more than 2 times higher than the percentage among women without an early rape history. Now, this article goes into some things like there are several theories, and it varies from woman to woman. Women who were sexually abused as children have learned silence and may be unable to enforce appropriate boundaries given their childhood experiences. And I actually mentioned that in Who Runs the World. This is why we have a whole bunch of unwanted pregnancy at this time. Some theorize that it is a way of attempting to master anxiety or trauma. Some suggest that traumatization may cause some to revert to familiar patterns, despite whatever pain it may cause. And some others suggest that women who have been assaulted early learn to associate sex with pain and trauma, and therefore are less likely to be able to distinguish between consent and coercion. Despite the relative devastation of each crime, we're far more likely to offer sympathy to repeat victims of burglary. It is easier to imagine being appalled when someone once again comes home to a broken window, yet we're more skeptical if someone claimed they had been raped a second time, or a third time, or a fourth time, or a fifth time. Because it does, I'm about to show you how it literally became like my life. With rape, it can be more difficult to grasp, in part because of the culture surrounding sexual assault. A victim is very often disbelieved once. After multiple instances, a forced sexual encounter is seen as their fault, be it the way they dress, the way they conduct themselves, or how much they drank. An easy answer is to assume they are trying to cover up regretted sexual encounters, or that they misunderstand the concept of rape. The stigma against rape contributes to women's compulsion to repeat their traumas. Chris O'Sullivan, Senior Research Associate of Safe Horizon, explained that one recurring theme throughout his research in the area was that women were likely to take responsibility for the original assault. They are so full of self-blame and shame from the original assault that they felt unable to act on their own behalf during a later sexual assault or victimization. Sullivan also emphasized that re-victimization, despite its nature, was never a victim's fault, and women may take years to recover from a sexual assault. Being assaulted multiple times can compound trauma. Sexual assault victims are much more likely to suffer from depression, attempt suicide, develop PTSD, self-harm, or use maladaptive coping strategies such as eating disorders or substance abuse. And the repetition compulsion is a phenomenon that still confounds researchers in terms of successful interventions, but that doesn't mean that informal but steady support from friends or family won't be effective in any victim's recovery process. And I would even say that would also apply to like emotional rape as well. But I'm going to, I wrote something and I'm going to detail a couple instances. Because that's what I was told to do. I was actually told to do it when I was doing the setup, but I didn't want it to be in the same video. But one of the instances I'm going to read about happened during one of those time frames. So I went to visit my friend in Memphis. And she left me stranded. I knew a police officer that she was dealing with, and I contacted him. I think maybe I should just start. This is the year of my 21st birthday. Okay. Late June, my friend asked me to come down because her mom is sick and it's stressing her out. She wants to move, and do I want to come down there and be roommates? I lie about my whereabouts to my son's dad, and I'm in Memphis. After a week, I call and say where I am, and I justify leaving because he left in May and never said anything. He said he'd give me a month. Our plan is to be strippers at Magic City. And that way I can make a lot of money, save it, and be able to commute to split parenting time with Jeremiah's dad. But since I don't know anyone there, I didn't want to do daycare. And I'd have to be creative about income and spend weeks at a time off. Dancing was the only way I knew how to have that versatility at the time. I asked her to link me up with the club, but she never took me. She went out of town a few times and left me behind, came back with thousands. Meanwhile, I'm working at Arby's. And this is also, okay, so Magic City was huge at this time. And this is also when Drake first came out. He had the hold on, let's do the discography real quick. The music is always important. Shout out to Drake. I mentioned you yesterday, but I forgot it was your birthday yesterday. Happy birthday, sir. I was so excited. Okay, so this time he had Comeback Season, and he had Thank Me Later and So Far Gone were out at this time. Bro, listen to that shit nonstop. Okay, anyways. I'm working at Arby's. And not only am I working at Arby's, I'm in Memphis, okay? So Memphis is their minimum wage was lower than Ohio's at the time. So I'm working at a job that I could have worked at home and made more money, okay? But she tries to convince me to sleep with this white blood spatter analyst cop, and he would get mad if you said blood splatter, who still calls black people colored in exchange of a car for her. I didn't. On top of that, I discovered her mother was lying about her illness as a ruse for money. She created a foundation for her son, made a lot of changes in the community, but she also came under fire for suspicion of embezzlement with that foundation. Jeremiah's dad happens to call and say he misses me. He'll help me get back into school. He just wants to be with me. And since I'm seeing my friend for who she really is and her mom for who she really is, I decided going back would be the best thing to do. And I told her. About a day later, Jeremiah's dad calls me back and says I'm sleeping around. This girl told him everything. She says I slept with this guy. She asked me to drop off her friend, and it took me long to get back. So she claimed I slept with this guy because it took me a long time to get back. But the reason I didn't get back is because GPS isn't what it was then. Okay. I got lost. Okay. I'm not from Memphis. I got lost. I did not sleep with that young man. She also said I was in line to sleep with that cop, which wasn't true. It was her idea, and it only benefited her. I'm not that kind of duck. She was supposed to pick me up one day from Arby's, but she didn't, so she sent the cop. We parked in her driveway and talked. He told me about her mother because he's a cop. He knew who was investigating her. He told me about real estate, and he told me to be careful. After 2 hours, I got out, but no sexual advance was ever made, and I was literally sitting in the driveway the entire time. She uses this lapse of time to plant a seed of doubt. I swear I was in that driveway. I lie, but I don't like to lie. I try to function by an honesty policy. This motherfucker met her one time, and he believed her after all I had gone through. From November to now, I remained faithful even after our fight, because we had a very physical fist fight, which I actually wrote about earlier too, but it's neither here nor there. I love that man, and he believed a stranger. So her and I get in an argument, and who do I call? I call the cop. I go to his house, and he is talking all kinds of weird shit. He talks about his interest in trannies and black women, and I begin to panic. He allows me to sleep in the guest room, which I obviously locked the door. The next day, he left before I woke up. I'd say I woke up around 7, and he left the TV on a loop of blood-spattered documentaries. I couldn't find the remote, so now I'm really creeped out. Before I even began to read this, I already felt the anxiety that I felt that day. He was creepy. He was creepy. All right, so I'm walking through his house. He has 5 doors, and all of them are locked from the outside. A key is needed on either side, and I'm even more creeped out. I remember him telling me his house actually had 2 houses that he built into one. So I go on one side and my GPS says one address. I go to the other side, it says another. And it also got many, many, many tools, okay? He has so many tools in his house. In my mind, torture tools, the kind of tools that make blood spatter fun to look at. I am at the height of freaked out. And I send both addresses to my sister. Tell her to hit me up in 24 hours. So I shower, I pack my shit, and I text him and I ask him what time he's off. I start calling strangers I met in Memphis. One is the young lady that I mentioned in the day I learned to love my appearance. She is as southern as they come. Chocolate skin, plump in all the right places. You call her stout, and she agrees to pick me up shortly after he gets back. The look on his face, because facial expression is everything. Body language is everything, okay? It told me everything I needed to know. Okay? This man had intent to harm me, and this young lady was an angel. I stayed with her for a week. And in this week, a lot of things happened. We'll just put it like that, all right? So, we get into a disagreement as well. Something happened. I think I slept with her cousin or some shit, and it caused a rift between me and her. So I end up with yet another stranger. She invited her boyfriend to a threesome, but he got sick. I then met her cousin and fucked him and found out he was married. My bad. And this caused a rift, and I was calling strangers again. I link up with this guy I met at the bar, and he takes me all the way out to fucking Mississippi. All right. And he's saying he would like me to stay forever. Oh, God. Oh, my God. And he'll even give me the car that he has out back. I have the worst sex in my life with this man. It is so awful that I can't forget it. And then he tells me I need to make money. And he starts talking about pimping me. Okay? He drove me to a farm, pull up, there's at least 20 men, and I see no women. He attempts to sell me. No one bites, and I am relieved. Utterly fucking relieved, okay? But this... Okay, let's go back to... Okay, in the setup, we have Saint Nick trying to sell me. We have... So when I come back and I dance, that is why I ended up doing it that one time, because it was such a everybody's trying to fucking sell me. The fuck? Okay, so I still have no way to get home, and this is clearly not it. So I try one last stranger via Facebook. He's an NFL player, and I heard that my friend had stole from him, and he was looking for her. So I told him my troubles, and he told me if I sell her out, he'll buy me a bus ticket. Okay, so he picked me up in a red Camaro and whisked me away to MGM's casino and asked if I wanted to party. Okay, tells me to get dressed and tells me that we're going to a strip club. Okay, so his body was amazing, and I certainly admired it at one point, but I had enough sex and I wanted to get home to my son's dad, because it was never anything. One thing I've noticed about myself is whenever abandonment happens is when a whole phase happens, right? Like self-destruct. I go into self-destruct. So that is what led me to be having sex with somebody who was married and causing a rift. She would have helped me. That girl would have helped me. It was because I was in self-destruct mode that anything unusual had happened. Okay. So we got to the strip club. I ordered a Bud Light Lime on tap. I drank 1/4 and went to the bathroom, and I left my drink unattended. I come back and finish my drink. We get 2 lap dances, and by the third, I was performing a lap dance for this guy out of nowhere. So we're talking a total of, an average song is in between 3 and 4 minutes long, right? So within 8 minutes, I'm now dancing. I felt drunk, but I can't be, because it's a fucking Bud Light Lime. You know the kind of drinks that I drink now, like the kind of beer I drink now? A Bud Light Lime is like water.